All right. I'm here with Jim Hendrix. How you doing today, Jim?
I am doing great. Thank you,
Awesome.
Matt. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. So I'm so excited to have you here, and I appreciate you coming on the Convene Connections, podcast because we're really kicking this back off. You're one of the first people that we're going to highlight and talk about within Convene because you're doing some great things, and it's really excited for me, for us, for our team, to have people like you come on to the platform. So first and foremost, tell us just a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you do.
Okay. Well, I am from Riverside, California originally. I live in Colorado in Longmont now. Um, I started life as an engineer and still work as an engineer. Um, well, actually, a program manager. Uh, I was a marriage and family therapist in parallel with that for 11 years and have actually been working on the material that I present in the Convene communities in my Loving Your Child's Brain modules for about 25 years.
Yeah.
So it's been a long a long process of putting things together and getting to the place that I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is exciting because, me with my psychology background, with my counseling background, this is such an important topic because, when you're looking at parenting and you're looking at, to me, there's no more important topic in the United States than right now than parenting. And that's a little biased on my part because I have 3 kids. But I think, if you look at what our kids have gone through the last couple of years, well, the different changes in society and things are going on, that this is number one. And so you're hitting the nail on the head with your training. And so why did you go to this area? What made you really interested in the brain and the
Well,
function?
it kind of started with an accident I had, actually two of them when I was really little. When I was 5, I dove into a shallow pool and split my head open.
Mm.
And when I was 7, I was hanging from a branch in the tree over a hole that I had dug myself. It was about 4 feet deep, that in the bottom had broken concrete and glass and had an upside down swamp cooler stand that was all rusty. And I just swung over to let go and go aside of the hole, fall outside the hole. I woke up upside down in the hole.
Okay.
And I don't know how long I was out. Never told anybody. As far as I know, I didn't even have a bump. But from that time forward, I suffered with depression. And it was normal. That was my normal life, and didn't really have treatment until I was in my 30s. And I just clicked with the Amen Clinic's approach, Dr. Amen's work, and how a bump on the head can be something that we don't even give a second thought to, and it can affect a person's life throughout their lifetime. So it really drew me in to psychology. Although I didn't go back to school until I was, I think, 40.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I clicked with the material. I used it with my clients. I did mostly, even though my degree is as an MFT, I did mostly individuals, children, addicts, and just adults in general. And it's amazing how I use something called SPECT imaging that the Amen Clinic does, and it's different than an MRI that shows the physical structure. It shows blood flow and brain activity, and it's really easy to see when it's a healthy brain versus an unhealthy brain.
Yeah.
Things really pop, and it makes it easy for people to understand concepts that are usually pretty difficult. Makes it really easy to show, and even if you never had a SPECT scan done, you can use the pictures with your kids. Even if you remember back in the 80s, maybe it was, that this is your brain on drugs, and I had a fried egg in a pan. the pictures of a SPECT scan of a brain that's been abusing drugs is scary, no
Oh,
matter how old you
yeah,
are.
there's no doubt.
um,
Yeah.
so there are examples like that throughout my material.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. So one of the things that makes me think about is, you go back to the 70s, the 80s, the 90s is we didn't really talk about this stuff. This was not on the radar of anybody. We didn't really get into depression or, ADHD or ADD or any of these things, but they were here. They were going on. They
Absolutely.
were part of everyday life, but we didn't we glossed over. Why is it important now as parents that we start learning about this and we start respecting all these different things that are going on? And talk about that for a minute.
Well, I think it's even more important now, and there's at least two reasons that come to mind immediately. One, in 2020, the world changed.
Mhm.
The incidence of depression was accepted at about 4% before that time.
Yeah.
3 months or 6 months into 2020, the incidence of depression was 25%,
Yeah.
and it only got worse from there. Anxiety, depression in particular, and with social media, people see other people's best. That's what gets put up on social media and makes us feel worse than, makes us feel depressed, makes us feel anxious because our life doesn't measure up to somebody else's. This is the best I have, and they think that's normal.
Yeah.
And I say, if you think someone's normal, you just don't know them well enough. And kids are really good at hiding
Yeah.
when they're feeling depressed or anxious,
Yeah.
and others aren't. But you find the captain of the football team or the head cheerleader who commits suicide because nobody saw, they never told anybody that they were having trouble.
Yeah. I call a lot of that, honestly, I call it the Facebook fantasy world.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so much, the Facebook fantasy world or Instagram fantasy world, whatever you want to call it. There's so much of that unrealistic stuff that goes on. We do look up and idolize, and we have these influencers and we have these people, their world is just wonderful and amazing. What's reality behind it? It just like you're saying, and it's these kids live, eat, and sleep social media.
Mhm.
And it's such a catch-22 world that we live. I talk to parents about this all the time. It's such a catch-22 world that we are living in. And the reason why is because guess what? Social media is not going anywhere. It's
Right.
part of
That's right.
everyday life. And if you
Mhm.
don't allow your kids to be on it, or you don't allow them to participate in it, there's another side to the two sides of the equation here. If you're not on it and you don't have a phone and you're not one that's on social media, well, guess what? Developmentally, that's how they communicate nowadays.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
part of life.
Mhm.
So as parents, we have to figure out how to work through that, how to incorporate, how to learn, and what social media is, and set rules and set boundaries and all that. So it's a different world.
Yep.
So you get the two sides where parents just want to say, no, we're not going to do it. Well,
Right.
there's ramifications of that.
Right.
That's for a
Yeah.
whole nother podcast, but I
Yeah.
get them
Right.
off that.
Yeah. Kids will find a way around that. So.
Correct. Yeah. But so as parents, it's a different world, right? It's
Mhm.
a different world. And I know that your training, right here is loving your child's brain, but this is good. I want to bring this up. This training is good for parents and adults as well. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So the material that I cover is just as applicable to adults as it is to children. It's just with children, we have it's like you're moving a rock with a lever. The lever arm is much larger. We can make a bigger difference with children. But I have illustrations of adults' brains throughout the material,
Yeah.
and most people will get to if they get to the toxic exposure, drugs and alcohol module, they'll have to rethink their lifestyle,
Yeah.
because it's in technicolor what it's doing to their brain,
Yeah.
and so and hopefully you will go through the material and you will want a better brain. Dr. Amin calls it brain envy.
Yeah.
And if you do those things for yourself, you're setting a much better example for your child, and makes it much easier for them to follow along with the changes that are minor changes in lifestyle and diet and exercise and that sort of thing for the most part. I try to give everybody an alternative to medication, because I know a lot of people are averse to medication. And there's only two issues that really require it, and that's bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. And those two things, without medication, you're gonna have a very rough life.
Yeah.
And it may be a very short one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting to me. Again, you're talking about, development, and it's going back to the bumps in the head. I think back, I played football, I played baseball. Gosh, how many bumps on the head did I take? Maybe that's what's wrong with me today, Jim. I don't know. But it's just important to understand what's going on. So my wife, I like to talk about this. My wife's a pediatric nurse, wonderful thing that she does. But when you're talking about the changes in the world and mental health now today in the world, it's so much more prevalent, and these kids are hit with mental health. I think we need to be talking about mental wellness, and that's really kind of what you're talking about. You're not talking about mental health. You're saying, can we get ahead of the curve with diet and exercise, all those things? So talk about that a little.
So I try to help people understand things, how the brain works when it's working well, and what things look like when it's not working well for different parts of the brain. And it allows you to see well in advance when your child may be having an issue that could be easily addressed now, rather than waiting and getting into deep trouble later.
Yeah.
And ADD is an example. I talk about there's not one kind of, or not two different things, ADD and ADHD. There's 7, and each one has a different treatment approach. And I'm trying to remember what my major point was there, but if
well, we were talking about, just the importance of understanding your kid and understanding what's going on with them. And so if there's 7 types of ADD and ADHD, if you can focus down and figure out where they're at, then you can get very specific on how you're treating them.
Right. And I talk about the consequences of untreated ADD and that spectrum of issues. And it's not very positive. There's a lot of kids that are severely stymied because of it. They suffer a lot of issues. And I also talk about positive anxiety. Some anxiety is good. If you don't have any, you're probably going to be a psychopath.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's so right. So what ends up happening, back to my wife, is like, working in the pediatric ED, they have a 4 beds, area that they focus on the mental health area. And so they're a 24 bed unit, and it's not unusual for them to have 10, 15, 16, kids that are in there for mental health. And a lot of times what goes on, and I think this is where your training is so relevant, what goes on is, my wife will go in and she will work with the individual and ask questions and all that. And the parent will follow them out to the nursing station. And she said they always do the same thing every time. They throw their hands up and they're like, we don't know what to do. We're out of options, you know, and
Yeah.
they're giving up. So they just bring their kid into the emergency department. Well,
Right.
if they could go through some of your education and some of that learning process and understand a little bit more about, you know, their child's brain and what their child is going through and identify what they're going through, maybe they can avoid that.
Yes, exactly. And that's really what I'm trying to get to the parents is our tools that they can use to address things early, to spot things early. And my motto there, giving your child every chance to flourish throughout their lifetime. I'm not talking about just right now, you know, a 5-year-old. What you do with your 5-year-old, if you address things properly, will help them into their 90s, their hundreds. A child born today is supposed to live the order of 130 years, and I think that estimate may be on the conservative side because of the just rapid increase in technology.
Yeah.
And if we don't learn how to treat those things like dementia and Alzheimer's and strokes and so forth, they're going to spend half their lifetime being warehoused because the brain doesn't work right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's just
Um,
not good.
so it's really important to hit those things early.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes total sense. I mean, I'm telling you, it's timely because this is what we're going through now today in society. There's so much changes that are going on. These kids are living in with a lot of pressure. They're living in this world where there's, you know, like I said, it's amazing to me the difference in 10 years ago to now, but they're hit with mental health, you know. One of the things that drives me nuts is okay, we're going to give you a mental health day off of school. So we're going to let you stay home, we're going to let you play video games, we're going to let you, and you're going to get a mental health day. Why not give them a mental wellness day, and let's give them the tools and not only the kids the tools, but the mom and dad and the family the tools that you need to deal with what's going on in today's society right now.
Right.
And
Right.
and that includes, you know, if I'm being very critical of us as parents, is we're helicopter parents. I'm a helicopter pilot, so I like to go with this analogy. We're helicopter parents, so we're going to oversee our kids, right? We're going to protect them to the point that positive anxiety that you're talking about, we don't want them to have anxiety.
Right.
So in the long run, when they get older, they don't know how to handle anxiety, and so then
Right.
it becomes very overwhelming. And I'll talk to individuals or kids, and I'll say, well, what's going on? What's happening? Well, I'm anxious. I'm having extreme anxiety. Well, what do you have an extreme anxiety about? Well, I have a lot of homework and I have, you know, 2 tests this week. Well, that's life, you know,
Mhm.
but we're to the point where they're having trouble handling just everyday life, you know, so we have to
Right.
get past that somehow.
Right. And there are a lot of tools to address anxiety. And these days, doctors, even psychiatrists, don't give anti-anxiety medications because they're addictive.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you have to learn things like deep breathing techniques and something called havening that I talk about in one of the free courses. That it's basically, you know, just doing this with your hands causes your brain to generate delta waves that are the brain waves of
Yeah.
deep sleep, and
Absolutely.
it will help calm you down. Um, and
Yeah.
people don't know, um, and breathing is highly underrated.
Yeah.
It really goes a long way. 3 deep breaths can change your day.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's really cool. Well, I'm going to transition us in and let's go to your content inside of Convene. We'll talk about your group. So everybody should be able to see this. And so this is inside of Convene. Let me make this big, entire full screen. So talk about your group inside of Convene a little bit.
Okay, so my group in Convene is basically broken down into 17 different modules. The first module has got 10 experiences in it, and it gives you sort of an introduction to the introduction to the and background and guidance for how I do things. The second one is how to tell if your child is having brain issues. I really stress behavior issues are not behavior issues, they're brain issues. It's something in your child's brain that's not working quite right. That doesn't mean it's they're bad or they're dumb. It just means that something is off, and it helps you start to see why that is and how that works.
Yeah.
The third one talks about your child's brain being unique and fragile, which I think is really important. It goes back to that, your brain is very soft, and your skull is very hard and has nice sharp ridges. That's one of the things I'll talk to God about when I get there. Not really, but it does leave a little bit to be desired in terms of contact sports and things like that. And then in part 4, I go through each brain type in specific. Each brain
area.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Each brain area that is important, and talk about what it does when it's working well and what it does when it's not working so well. And I bring that back in the paid modules to go into it more deeply. I'll review that, but it gives you an idea for where that part of the brain is. And again, if in pretty simple language, what happens, what it's supposed to do, and what happens when that part of the brain has got an issue. Yeah. There's a brain assessment that I have that's at the far right there, and that you can download it, take it, and fill it out for free. And then when you send it back to me, we set up a meeting, and that meeting is a paid thing but you can have as many people as you want fill it out for your child or yourself, and I will take all of that basically for one price, if you will, and give you an approach, tell you what's going on, and an approach to how to deal with your child in specific. And the bottom left one is the havening experience, and I highly recommend that one because it is something that's really simple, and you can use it with really small children, and you can do it at bedtime, and you can do something called affirmational havening, where you're basically putting them into or they're putting themselves into a sort of a hypnotic state where they are more susceptible to affirmations, and they can have them. You can say, I choose to be happy. I choose to be calm. I choose to feel safe. All of those things that are, you want your child to have in their arsenal and feel, and it kind of turns off the part of the brain that says, oh no, it's not. No, I'm not. Oh no, I don't. That one I think is really important.
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Wow, that's important, because I think just connecting and calming down, I'm going to tell you, that's where the anxiety that's in the society today for our kids, with again, going back to it and everything that they're going through, being able to turn their brain off at night, and being able to sleep. It's not just, and again, to your point earlier, it's not just for kids, it's for adults too. Being able to turn your brain off at night is so key to your mental wellness. It's, if you're tired and you're not sleeping because you can't turn it off, and I know a few people who can't turn it off, they have trouble sleeping, and it's really key.
Sleep is really important.
Yeah,
I would like to touch on the last two that are there before you leave.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Because one of them is how to bond with your and love your child at any age. When your child starts to become a teenager, they want to spend more time with their friends than you. That's normal, but it's important to keep the bond and keep the communication going. And I talk about ways to do that so that when they do that transfer, um, that transition, they still keep you in the loop.
Yeah.
And I think, that is really key.
Incredibly important. Incredibly important. And then the last one is it to your child in meditation? Is it too woo free? That's so important. That's a great little saying, because it's not. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to really go and do hot yoga, but and the reason why I say it's a little bit different, but it's not, because I can get into that mental mindset when I'm in there, and really go through that process.
Yeah, my son has been doing meditation with my grandchildren for years now, and they started when they were really little, and they just do that as a family.
Yeah. So we're going to go through one of the experiences. We'll just show you we don't have to really talk about it really in depth, but here in this one, you talk about who you are. This is how it is set up. You talk about who you are, give a little bit of what type of things that you do, this spec scans, you're going to introduce that. You can see here that there's a introduction document here, PowerPoint. So this is wonderful. I think that's great. And then the next thing is into a video where you break it down. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So basically every experience is a video presentation with lots of pictures. I use slides when I talk, and it's got me in the corner so you can see me waving my hands. And but I believe that, I guess I'm not the only one, right? Pictures worth 1,000 words.
Sure.
And so I like to use a lot of pictures, and I use a lot of spec scans because they're so graphic. They show so well what's going on, and isolate even what's going on. So you learn about that in the free material, and then by the time you figure out what your child needs, and you pick one of the paid ones, which are all pretty inexpensive. You get a chance to pick the ones that are most important to you.
Yeah, and so the cool thing too, and we'll touch this, and then we're going to go back and show the paid ones, the different things that you teach, is you're the expert. These are your courses, right? So then what happens is, this one thing that makes Convene different than other platform is I go through the video material, I look at the video material, and then I get access to you. So I can come into this and, again, you're just launching this, but I went through that first one, and, we're in here and we can collaborate and we can talk. Now, I have access to the expert, and that's really what we want people to understand and be able to do. And then it'll just take you on to the next experience there. If we go back to the group experiences, that's where we were. But what I'm going to go back to is here's the parent group, and let's go into the 17 modules. So these talk a little bit about all the different courses that you have in here and the different things that you talk about.
Okay, so the first, we just went through the introductory stuff. That's all free. The next one is it a bump on the head or a traumatic brain injury, and how to treat it, more importantly. Traumatic brain injuries happen way more often than we think. A kid falling down the stairs and getting a bump on the head may in fact change their personality, their behavior, and it's not something they're doing on purpose. It's a problem. Their brain has been rattled around in their skull, and it has caused damage that can be treated. And I haven't put it in yet, but I've got a first aid for that. That's something you should do right away within the first 48 hours. And then for some, you may have had your child had a bump on the head at 3, and they're now 14, and they're really acting out. It may be a result of what happened at 3, and there is a procedure, a protocol to do to reverse that was developed out of a study done on retired and active NFL players who typically have the order of 30,000 brain concussions in their career. And it was able to reverse things like dementia and Alzheimer's and other memory issues.
Wow.
And so it's really powerful stuff. And that one is one that I'm passionate about, because most of that, we think that there's nothing you can do about it. If you have a concussion, the doctor tells you to go home and rest. And the consequences of a concussion can last up to a year or more.
Yeah.
And it can take up to a year or more for a change in a child or an adult, for that matter, to manifest.
Yeah.
And it's not, if your child has one of the free experiences, I talk about, what to look for and changes in your child.
Yeah.
And a change in behavior, if all of a sudden your child goes from being the sweetest kid on the block to strangling a little girl on the playground, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And it's probably not just behavior. It's probably not behavior at all. So that's that one. I probably said too much about it, but the next one is toxic exposure, drugs and alcohol, and it's illustrated with SPECT scans. So you get to see what the result of different substances is on the brain. You can use the pictures with older kids to give them some healthy anxiety, because nobody wants a brain that looks like some of these pictures.
Yeah.
ADD, ADHD, the 7 types, and what to do about them. One thing I'll say is there are 2 types in particular that if you treat them in the normal fashion with medication, which is typically a stimulant, they will get worse. So it's really important to know the type.
Yeah. Well, and I want to say, and often doctors don't jump in that deep. They
Oh,
don't
no.
jump in deep enough. You go to a doctor and they're gonna take what you talk to them about, and they're gonna think, okay, we have ADHD or ADD, and they're gonna treat with medication. So they don't go as deep to identify which type that the
Right.
child might have.
That's right. And one type on a high protein diet gets worse. So even diet can make a difference. Even psychiatrists don't go in this deep, typically. And they typically treat with a stimulant, and your child will either get better. Stimulants are magic for the right type of ADD. They'll change a kid's interest in school and behavior in a matter of an hour.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't want to medicate their kid, and medications do have some side effects.
Yeah.
I present approaches that don't require medication.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
The next one is kids in depression. It's an epidemic. And even little kids can be depressed. And I talk about how to treat with and without medication. When I was going through school, I was in the first year, they forced me to take psychopharmacology, and I have a disorder I call obsessive learning disorder. And so I jumped in with both feet and have a pretty solid background with medications. But it's much better to treat with supplements and exercise and diet if you can. For one thing, you never have to report those to an insurance company.
Mhm.
When you go to get your life insurance, as an example, that's a tip for adults.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's a paid experience for the brain assessment results, and that's typically me going through all of the material you send me back, and at least an hour with you working on giving you the results, as well as working on the issues and how to tailor a treatment approach for your child.
Yeah.
Anxious and panicked, that talks about some healthy anxiety is good, but too much anxiety is a problem, as we all know, and panic attacks are horrible. You think you're going to die, and there are a lot of treatments, or a lot of things that you can do to calm yourself. And there's a lot of things that you can do ahead of time if you're prone to anxiety or panic attacks that help give you more headroom. So if this is overwhelmed or anxious or whatever, and this is normal, the techniques give you more headroom. So it makes it
Yeah.
farther, so that if you can kind of bounce around and take more of life's speed bumps, if you will, without bumping into a panic attack,
Yeah.
as an example.
Yeah, absolutely.
This one is great for adults stuck with reliving past traumas. A lot of people have issues with PTSD, and a lot of kids do too.
Mhm.
And basically, this module goes through the different experiences that can generate PTSD, as well as how to treat it. And again, something like havening is a great way to treat PTSD. And with PTSD and havening, it's good to work with a practitioner. There are basically licensed practitioners of havening
Yeah.
around the country, or EMDR is another one.
Yeah. EMDR. Yeah.
And I'm not licensed to do either one of those things, but I will point you in the right direction.
Yep.
Another of my favorites is stuck and stubborn, obsessive compulsive spectrum issues. And that covers everything from a defiant child to some eating disorders, drug and alcohol issues, gambling addiction, even chronic pain are covered in that spectrum. And calming down that part of the brain that is responsible for that is called the anterior cingulate gyrus. That's our $10 word for the day.
Yeah.
Or the ACG, and it runs right up the middle of your forehead. And when you have those kinds of thoughts, it's basically working way too hard, and it needs serotonin to calm down. That can be a medication, that can be diet, that can be supplements. Exercise produces serotonin. So there's a lot of different ways to calm that down. And with all of these things, what I like to say is life doesn't have to be so hard. You may not have clinical depression, but you may be kind of knocked down by life.
Yeah.
Your child may be. And so you can implement these kinds of things to address subclinical issues,
Mhm.
and make a huge difference in your child's life and trajectory.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
There's just quick aggression, violence in the temporal lobe. Again, a blow to the head can cause aggression and violence. They typically don't come out of nowhere. Bipolar disorder support, it's not treatment for that is medication, but support for a person, supporting them in keeping on their medication is really critical.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
that's, and the same is true for schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And someone with schizophrenia or bipolar, I would encourage to go and get a brain scan at one of the AIM clinics.
Yeah.
There are 10 of them around the country, and like it says there, it helps with compliance with treatment.
Mhm.
Because the person can see themselves. Oh, this is my brain as it was. This is what it looks like with medication. Okay, I don't want to go back there again.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not trying to poison me. I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
The next one there is what we're protecting our children from: stroke, dementia, and Alzheimer's. I show SPECT scans of those conditions and talk about those conditions. And basically, those things can start 30 years before the symptoms occur.
Wow.
So it's really important for your child and us adults to look at lifestyle changes to help our brain. Basically, you want to do things that are healthy for your brain and avoid things that are harmful for your brain in really simple terms. And that's what all of this is about.
Yeah, definitely.
I have the program. It's mostly about killing ants, but I talk a little bit about it. Emotional intelligence versus IQ, and then go into killing ants, which are those automatic negative thoughts that we all have that infest our mind and keep us from our potential.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think everybody has that.
Yeah, I think so too. Then there's the cerebellum and autism spectrum disorders. They're not necessarily coupled, but usually people with autism have cerebellum issues. The cerebellum is responsible for coordination of both thought and your body. I talk about how people who have an athletic slump typically have a cerebellum that has dropped out, and it'll stay that way until they get some positive feedback. It also is helped by doing things that require coordination, learning to dance, learning to juggle. Those kinds of activities will help boost the performance of the cerebellum. And it should be the hottest part of the brain when you look at a SPECT scan. You should always see that.
Yeah.
And brain healthy diet and exercise, it's not real complicated, really simple. Eat healthy food and avoid the standard American diet, which is abbreviated SAD, probably for a good reason. And then some alternative brain health treatments. There are examples for, actually there are in other places as well. I talk about meditation, and I talk about what a brain looks like before and after meditation. It actually makes a physical difference, a physical change in your brain. And also gratitude.
Yeah.
Gratitude actually makes a physical change in your brain. And there was an experiment done on a woman who used gratitude as her treatment for PTSD. Worked pretty well. Then they asked her to come back the next day and think hateful thoughts. Well, she was pretty good at it. She didn't want to do it, but she was pretty good at it when she did it. And her PTSD was markers were worse, and her cerebellum dropped out,
Wow.
which was kind of interesting. So that would mean her coordination wasn't so good. Her speech wouldn't be so good.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
coordinated. So those are the kinds of things that I talk about. I've got other things that are in my head that haven't gotten up yet.
Yeah.
And with everything there, there's a discussion board. You can ask questions anonymously, and I will answer them.
Yeah.
And other people can answer them too.
So I'm glad you said that, because in your group or inside of the experiences, people can ask questions anonymously. That's one of the most, I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the key things about Convene communities that is wonderful, because, not everybody wants to come out and say, hi, my child is struggling in this area. My child is struggling in, with ADHD, or my child is struggling with bipolar. You don't want to air your dirt. However, Convene gives you the opportunity to come in and put your question or your comments, your discussion board anonymously. And that is so important, because now Jim can respond to you as the expert, and he doesn't even know who you are. I don't know who you are. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's going to foster that learning environment.
Right. Yeah. When we were working as a marriage and family therapist, I worked in a church, and more than once had someone come to me and say, my child is being sexually aggressive, and they're 5. And people kind of freak out. And it's more normal than you think. But chances are they've witnessed that behavior. But that's kind of a topic where you could bring that up on the board anonymously and not have to worry about your own embarrassment. There's no reason to be embarrassed about any of this stuff. It's all life.
Yeah.
And
well, you don't want to put it out there and then somebody be like, oh, you see, Matt. Yeah. His kids are struggling with, this and this. And so it just gives you the opportunity. Or if it's something that you personally are going through, because again, your training is good for this, and your training is good for other things too, right? Well, for adults, kids are adults. And so what that allows you to do is put yourself out there, ask the right questions, and get to the expert. And I think that's cool. You cover a lot of information there. You cover a lot of topics that are really important, and people can pick and choose what they want to go and what they want to see and what they want to go through.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, Jim. I think your content is amazing. People can come into Uniquely Yours. It's yours at convenecommunities.com. They can get in touch with you. You can see the how to get in touch with you behind you there. They can get directly in touch with you, which is great. But yeah, we really want people to come in and use Convene. So talk a little bit about your experience with Convene so far.
Oh, okay. So I guess first I should say I was on now I'm not going to remember the
Kajabi.
other big Kajabi. Yeah. Thank you.
Kajabi.
I was on Kajabi, and I built out my course on Kajabi, actually a couple of them, and Kajabi's great. But I would say from my experience with Convene is better. And it's better because one, the mechanics of putting things together is really easy to do. And two, it has that community aspect that Kajabi just doesn't have. And I've looked at other ones like Thinkific and those, and just being able to ask a question anonymously is not a thing. Being able to interact with the content creator is not a thing. I went to Convene in large part because it also has a structure where I don't have to do all the marketing. There's sort of a built-in Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a mechanism. It's like this, we're going to take this video, we're going to use this video to help you market. We're going to help you grow.
Right.
We're going to share
Right.
you on our social media. We're going to share you on our website, and give you the tools to go out and use on your social media as well.
Right. And also, if you take one of my or anybody else's experiences, you can also tell your friends, and if they sign up through your link, you get some money back as a thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. And it's also the interface. I had a little trouble with the interface to start with, but I got so much help from the videos and directly from the Convene staff, if you want to call them that. It was amazing. I felt really welcomed, and just that's that sense of community again.
Well, it's teamwork, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about, the idea behind Convene is that we help lift each other up. We help, people out there with these tough topics. And you're talking about a tough topic. You're talking about something that is at the forefront of things that are going on in today's society. That's just the facts. And so, for us, we want to support you. We want to help you grow, because we know as a platform, we're impacting other people's lives through your content. So it's important that we hit our mission by creating this platform where we are making a difference in people's lives each and every day. And that's what your content will do. It'll make a difference in people's lives. There's millions and millions of people who have kids that struggle in any of these areas on a given day.
Yeah. And I was really blown away by the support I got.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, because it's important to us, and it's important to us to, again, make a difference in people's lives, but to help you succeed at the same time. That's what we're here for. And that's why, convene, the word convene, if you look at the definition of convene, that's all it is, to come together. And how can we do that? We can do it in communities of like-minded people. That's what we want. We want to foster that type of growth. Yeah. Well, Jim, this has been great. It's been very informative. I appreciate you coming on. I look forward to us, helping you grow, but I really look forward just to seeing you grow. And I look forward to the feedback as people start to take your courses and start to share your courses. Like you said, you offer referral fees for your courses, so people can come in, take your course, or come in if you know somebody who's struggling in one of these different areas, become a member of Convene. Even if you don't need the course, you can refer Jim's group out and Jim's content out, and he pays referral fees for doing so. And so that's how we're going to grow. We're going to grow with each other. Yep. So I'll let you close it out. Any last words?
Well, I want to thank you all for sticking with me, and just keep in mind, the material that I present is giving your child every chance to flourish throughout their lifetime, not just today or tomorrow, but well into their old age, because what happens today will affect them later. It's really that important.
Absolutely. We see it every day with, these young kids struggling. We want to make them successful. We want to give them the tools to succeed. So it's awesome. And we want to give the adults the tools to succeed too. It's not just the kids that are, struggling through life today. So if we can give people the support and the tools that they need to succeed, it's key. So thank you very much, Jim. I really appreciate you, one, for being on today. Two, I really appreciate you being a part of Convene, and look forward to helping you grow and to seeing the testimonials of all the people coming forward that you're going to be helping. So really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching, for everybody that watched.